Um, that was the day that I felt like I was gonna die. I felt like I did die. I felt like my soul left my body and that they had to put it back. I just thought it was like a cold. There were a lot of people around me at work who had been getting sick. And it started one day, and then by day 3, it got to the point to where I felt like I needed to leave work early and go to the urgent care. When I went in, with those minor symptoms, they told me to go home and they tested me for strep throat. You don't have strep throat, you don't have the flu, you don't even have to worry about the COVID-19, which at the time I really wasn't. So I went home, followed doctor's orders, but I began to get worse. I just remember having a fever, loss of appetite, very weak, more and more weak as the days went on, shortness of breath, to the point of, I remember trying to reach my doctor after hours and I couldn't get through the questions because I couldn't breathe. I remember saying, I can't breathe, but it didn't dawn on me, this is serious, you can't breathe, you need to get up.
And I had to take her in the car, still not thinking anything about coronavirus, just like, man, she's really sick. It wasn't until we got to the ER till it started really hit me like, man, this could be coronavirus. I was seeing other people that was having her same symptoms, people having trouble breathing, and the ER was just like packed.
Once I got to the hospital, they wheeled me in and took all my vitals, took me back to the room and did a CAT scan. And when the doctor came in from the CAT scan, he said, you're not going anywhere. He said, both sides of your lungs are filled with pneumonia. He said that he was upset because of why the previous doctor had sent me home, and he told me that the medicines that I was taking was actually exacerbating the situation. I just remember being so sick. I was laying on the table and I remember crying because I was like, I can't get up. I was like, I'm too sick. Like, I don't want to go home. Like, I'm sick, but I didn't have the wherewithal to really advocate for myself because I just felt that sick and I was a little confused and a little just out of it.
It was really frustrating because it was very difficult to get a coronavirus test. Even when we went to the hospital that Wednesday, they confirmed that she had pneumonia and things of that nature, but they weren't even giving tests for corona. They gave her tests for everything else. They have to have a doctor give a request for you to be able to get a test. Then the CDC had to approve the doctor's request. So it was a long process from Wednesday to Sunday.
It wasn't until I remember coming to myself inside of the intensive care room one day, and the nurse would ask me each time, what is your name? What is your date of birth? Do you know why you're here? And I remember her telling me during one of those times, you have the coronavirus. So I was in the hospital for 22 days in the intensive care unit. It was overwhelming. I felt so many different emotions. I felt alone. At times I felt like, why am I here? What's happening to me? I felt like, are these nurses and doctors, are they helping me or are they harming me? Because I know I just feel horrible. My hands were tied to the beds. I couldn't move, I couldn't talk. I didn't know my name, my date of birth. I couldn't articulate what I wanted even by pointing at signs. So it was frustrating, to say the least, trying to ask questions and not being able to spell out words. I remember the first day, being in the hospital, my husband stayed the night, and the next day,
they was telling me that, I'm going to have to leave because she's going to end up having to go to ICU. So I was able to pray with her and just try to give her some reassuring words, let her know that everything was going to be okay. With her being in the hospital, my father was in the hospital as well. They came and took her out of the room and basically told me I had to leave. But on my way out, I tried to go check on my father. So I looked up where his room was, went to his room, but they wouldn't let me in. They told me that they was having difficulties with him as far as getting him to comply and things of that nature, because my father had early onset Alzheimer's. They ended up having to induce him into a coma just so they could feed him and get him his medicine. But even during that process, his condition worsened to where his oxygen levels were low, and he was, fighting for his life as well.
they had me to blow in this little machine and as hard as I could. And I remember being slumped over and trying to do it and then asking, did I do a good job? And I remember they looked at each other and said, as to say, no, but they didn't tell me that. So I could feel the seriousness of my condition at the time. From there, I remember going to a different room, which was darker and very, isolated, dark. And I remember the nurse being over me and being very gentle and caring and very concerned. And I just remember the weight of the seriousness of my situation. I remember feeling like, am I gonna live through this? Because it almost felt like they were looking at me like, I don't know if she's gonna live, and it's not funny, but it's just, I'm just being honest, that's how I felt. And I never experienced that before. And I remember waking up feeling like I was in a basement because there was no windows. And for some reason, I just felt like I was in the basement of a hospital. And I felt like I was in a makeshift room. I don't remember seeing walls or windows. I felt like I seen a column, a post in a hallway, and being in like a little square area. And there was a television in front of me. And it felt like I was like near the ground and the television was near the ground. And I remember so the show and but then I remember it after it would go off, it would come right back on. I'm like, wait a minute. So after about 3 times, I'm like, I remember thinking, feeling drugged and feeling like, why am I here? And just why I'm watching the same show. Like I just started feeling like depressed a little bit. Just sad, and unclear what was going on. As I started, I guess, to come down off this high from the medicine, I think that's what was happening. I got a little bit more strength, and I remember trying to pull this tube out of my mouth. And I remember trying to pull out and say, help me, like, get me off of here. And as I'm pulling it out, I can hear them saying, we had such a great night tonight. None of our patients have done anything to harm themselves. I can't remember the technical word they used. And just as I'm trying to pull this out, all of a sudden, they turned around and they see me and they just rushed in the room. And they tied my hands to the bed. And that's the first time they got really close to me. And they said, you are on a ventilator and a feeding tube. It is very important that you do not pull this out. It's very serious. It could be life or death. You can seriously harm yourself. So that's just one of the things I remembered. And I felt like it was just very serious at that time. And I felt like this coronavirus was something that was very, very serious. And it wasn't so much the actual symptoms of the virus, but it just felt like the weight of it. It felt violent. It felt like death. It felt like I was gonna die. It felt like my worst enemy was trying to kill me. I remember, I don't know where these thoughts came from, but I thought that it was like a terrorist attack. That's what I just thought and felt, like I was feeling the weight of this.
They're both in ICU in a coma. I can't even call and talk to them. I just got to call and check. So it was difficult. It was more so sad, me feeling sad for them because they were alone. I really didn't have time to, worry about what I was going through. I just felt for them. Even though we were dealing with all of that, and when I say we, I mean me and my 4 children, God gave us peace of mind. He didn't let us become overwhelmed by the situation. As a matter of fact, he allowed us to be hopeful. And so when you hear about God giving you peace that passes understanding, we were every day, we were playing games, we were watching movies together, we were having Bible study, we was cracking jokes, we was doing home repairs around the house, and because that's one of the things that I wanted to keep the kids encouraged is like, okay, we could work on these projects together so the house will be better when mom comes home than when she left. As time went on, it's like, okay, week 1, that's working, you get into week 2, and God is still keeping us, but it's like, man, they've been in there 2 weeks. And it starts getting more real that they might not come home.
I remember a nurse coming into my room and telling me that the 25th was the big day, and she was celebrating, hurrah, 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 today, 25th is the big day. And at that time, I thought, okay, this must be the day that I'm coming back to life. Because I remember shortly before then, laying in the bed, coming to the end of myself. I realized at that moment that I was not in control of my life, that I had no power over my life, that I could not will myself to get up as much as I wanted to get up. I asked the question, will I even hear my children breathe again? I just want to hear them breathe again. Like just their breath, would be refreshing, And I remember praying to God. I asked him, I said, am I going to live through this? And I wasn't sure if what he was going to say. And I was bracing myself, and I knew whatever he decided that I was going to be okay with it, because I had to anyways. He's in control. So after that, he said, you're going to recover. When he said that, I knew that meant I was getting up from that table, and I knew that I was going to fully recover, because it was something about what he said. When he said it, I knew I was getting up. And all of a sudden I saw the sun begin to rise, and I saw a crown over my head. And as the sun began to rise, I began to look into it. And, just as it got up above my head, it's like this peace, overwhelming peace just came over me. And looking into the light, I knew it was a vision of a sun, and I knew it was inside of the room, and I know that it was heavenly, because when I looked into it, everything about it, it had to be heavenly, And so as I'm staring into the sun, like I said, just this amazing peace came over me that I've never experienced before. And I couldn't help but to rest.
I asked the nurse, I was like, does anybody up there have an iPhone? From that night is when I started FaceTiming, because it was mainly because of my father, because my father was just unresponsive, period. And he had been since he was up there for the most part. And I was like, maybe if he's able to hear a familiar voice, then maybe that might jar something and allow him to come out of it. I FaceTimed him, his wife FaceTimed his stepdaughter. We all FaceTimed that night, and he was just like, it's like he wasn't there really. That same night, I got to FaceTime Shalundra as well. And she was not in the coma, but she still had the breathing tube, so she wasn't able to speak. But when she heard my voice and heard the kid's voice, we just tried to encourage her, and we just tried to smile and laugh and, let her know that we was waiting for her to come home and things like that. And she started crying. That was difficult to see, After we got off that FaceTime, I went into the garage and just broke down, That was tough for me to see my dad and her actually in the situation that they was in. It was bad. And then once again, it's just the feeling of knowing that they're alone.
Well, the 25th came and then it went. The 28th came and I remember her coming back into my room and saying, okay, the 28th. And I was confused because I'm like, I thought you said the 25th, but I couldn't really ask her. So she said the 28th. So I said, okay, I guess I'll figure out later what happened with those few days. Come to find out, they had tried to take me off the ventilator on the 25th. I didn't succeed on being able to breathe on my own until the 28th. I remember being in the hospital and knowing as I'm preparing for the 25th that this was a fight. Even though God had said that I'm gonna live, I'm gonna recover, I knew that I had to work, put some work into it. And so I was like in the fight of my life. I couldn't give up. I had to do what they were asking me to do. I had to have faith. I remember him saying, you know, she has to be off the medicine just right, and all these things have to line up for this to be a success. And so when it wasn't, again, it just felt like, and they just believed in me so much. So when I couldn't do it, it's like everyone felt disappointed. And in turn, I felt sad, I felt disappointed. So that was a really hard day. It was very draining emotionally and physically. And I was tired after that. That was the day that I felt like I was gonna die. I felt like I did die. I felt like my soul left my body and that they had to put it back, you know? Like I felt I was emptied out completely. I thought I was dead. I asked, am I dead? I literally thought I was dead.
The next day, my father passed away. You know, they tried to take my father off the ventilator. He couldn't survive off of the ventilator. And his other organs were shutting down and his vitals was looking very bad. And they just asked, you know, at this point, it's like really nothing else we can do. And he's in a pretty much vegetative state. He's not responding to anything. He's not even responding to pain anymore. And so they had to get the okay from me to go ahead and take him off the life support. And, you know, before we did that, we got a chance to FaceTime him and, you know, speak to him. And I got a chance to tell him how much he meant to me, how much I loved him, how much of a role model he was for me, how much, just how strong he was and how proud of him we were. And I asked him too, I said, if you can understand what I'm saying, just blink your eyes or something. And I could see like the corner of his eyes twitch, you know. And it was, it's still something that I deal with now because, you know, it's like he's laying there and we telling him his goodbyes and he looking at me with his eyes open. And it's like, I don't want to do this, but this needs to be done. Like, and, that day though, a few hours later after he passed away, my wife was able to come off the ventilator totally. And for her to be able to make it out of that situation, it was just like, it was everything because I prayed the night before, you know, for God to allow her to come home. But I didn't want to lose both of them, you know, at the same time. I don't know how I would have been able to deal with that. I'm sure God would have provided with family and friends and through the body, but he honored that prayer, man, and he brought her home the next day. I mean, not brought her home the next day, but she was able to come out of the coma the next day and I was able to FaceTime her. But I got to FaceTime her again every day after that. And every day she showed more and more improvement. Like the first day she couldn't really speak. She just kind of cried and things of that nature. And looking back, she didn't really know reality from what the medicine had her seeing and things like that. The next day when I FaceTimed her, she was able to speak more, but it was very hoarse. And the first word she said was, "Is that really y'all? Is that really y'all? Is that you guys?" Like she kept repeating herself. And we kept telling her, it's us, babe. And you made it. You're gonna be coming home soon. Like you did a good job. Things like that.
Again, God is just so good. You know, he was with me, with my family this whole entire time. Just from the timing of going to the hospital before everything broke out, I could have been at the hospital waiting in the emergency room for days and not being able to have a ventilator or the treatment that I needed. But if this was going to happen, it happened in a good timing for me. So I'm thankful for that. The nurses that were in the room were God sent. I remember one Hispanic lady who was like there most of the time. She was so kind and patient with me. She would apologize when she had to tie my hands to the bed, and she didn't have to do that. She would say, I'm sorry, but we have to do this. And I understood, and it helped me to understand. She would pray with me. I remember, tears would come down my eyes, and she would come to the side of me or grab my hand. And I felt like she prayed down heaven. They were such sincere and passion-filled, heartfelt prayers, and she would call on Jesus and pray for me, for my healing and for my comfort, and to be encouraged. I remember thinking, God, are these people hurting me or are they harming me? Because I just feel horrible. And just as I said that, and as she was leaving the room, she stopped in her tracks, turned around. Her guard was almost down. She was starting to pull it down and she left. But she came back and she got right in my face and she said, I want you to know that I am praying for you every morning and every night. And I'm not just saying that. She said, I'm praying for you every morning and every night, and you are going to be okay. And so that just brought so much comfort to me, because I knew that God heard my prayer. I knew that God was there with me, because I had just prayed that prayer she wouldn't have known I couldn't talk, couldn't ask her to come back. And she was leaving. It was just perfect timing. Being in the bed, I could feel the prayers of people. It's like I could almost hear the sound of a multitude of prayers. And it was so vibrant that I could feel it like within myself. And it was something about these vibrations and these prayers that I felt encouraged, and I felt like it was giving me life.
When you're going through a crisis like that, it shows you the importance of community. Like, you need your community. There's sometimes where we feel like we got this by ourselves and we could be off on our own, but when you're in a situation like that, you see how valuable community is.
I remember thinking about my children, but immediately I knew that they were with my husband and that he was going to take excellent care of them. I had no fear at all, no worry about that at all, no concern. That helped me tremendously to rest, knowing that my children will be safe and protected and have everything that they need. And that helped me to heal, because I don't think I would have been able to had I been worried about them. But just again, another testament of the love and the prayers and God just being with us. Not only did I feel his physical presence, I remember, again, being untrusting in the hospital room, but he opened my eyes in a different way to know that, and he was saying, look. And so as I'm looking and I can see the nurses working and they were helping me and they were trying to care for me, it dawned on me, oh, they're helping me. These people are fighting for my life. So just, again, God being with me in the room.
I think it was a Saturday when she came off, and she came home that next Thursday.
I couldn't believe, I was so grateful. I'm like, I made it. I thought I was dead. I thought I was going to die, but I overcame. I'm going home. I just was crying. And it was a great joy to see my family. They were excited to see me.
Well, it was a beautiful situation. We was just so happy to have her back. It's like getting somebody back from the grave, really. I had never been to where I hadn't even talked to her for 3 weeks. You know, we've been married 16 years coming up, and we went 3 weeks without communicating. On the way home, she asked me, "How are you doing about your father?" She said, "I know." And I hadn't told her that my dad had passed away. And she said, "I know." She said, "It's okay." She told me about the experience that she had with him. And it really just blew me away, because more so even than me, my dad's relationship with my wife wasn't that good. He took a lot of his anger out on her. And she said during that time when they had this experience, it's like she felt like his spirit came to her in the hospital and they made peace together. It was just amazing to me that nobody had told her that he passed away, but she just knew, and she was sure of it. Like, it wasn't like, did he die or nothing. Like, it was like, I know. I saw the victory in that too, because my father, he didn't want to see the final stages of dementia. And though God didn't totally heal him from dementia to where he was back to his old self, he did allow him to pass away before he was at a stage to where it could have gotten, you know. And so I think it's a blessing that God honored his desires and did at least take him away before he got to that place. That gave me more peace about the situation too.
When I got home, they had tried to really prepare the house for me.
And I was just so happy that we were able to give her a new environment, fresh. When she came home, she was just so happy and overjoyed. And the work that we put in while we was gone, the hope that we had was fulfilled. And it was just amazing.
Things that I had been asking, tell my husband, I want to paint, different things I want to do. He started working on around the house, and my kids were just so strong and courageous. I could just see that. They weren't sad, for what I was experiencing. They weren't without hope, They had laughter, and you could tell that the strength of their father really just carried them.
And people say, "Man, you're so strong. I don't know how to handle that." I don't count myself as strong. I count God as strong. When people think about surviving COVID-19, I don't think they think about how tough that fight could be. Just because there are people that don't die from it, it's people that nearly die, and it's like literally the fight for their life. And some people are having long-lasting effects after that. I'm just so glad that God healed her whole.
I just believe when he said, "You're gonna recover," he went fully. So even if I'm not there yet, I will be. But it's been a slow recovery, but I'm thankful. I'm thankful that I am recovering, and that God has been faithful to his word.